A few months back at MagicCon Philadelphia, I ran the first ever Unknown event. It had a big surprise. Brand new, never before seen playtest cards were distributed to players and they got to try them out. It was a real highlight of the event. MagicCon Minneapolis just happened, and what did I do this time? Let me tell you all about it. Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast, and both Unknown events in Minneapolis sold out days in advance, with 400 players in each of the two events, one Saturday and one Sunday. Guess we'll need to add even more seats for next time. The one on Saturday also benefited the Trevor Project, which is a fantastic charity, and it felt so great to get 400 people signed up for an event to support such a great cause. Okay, let me tell you what happened in the events. First of all, the basic event structure. It was Seal Deck, with each player receiving 3 March of the Machines draft boosters, 1 March of the Machine set booster, and 2 mystery boosters. Already a little fun and wacky, especially the set booster, which you don't normally use for sealed. The way the event worked was what I call rolling pairings. When you're ready to play, you just walk up and get paired by the judge with someone else who is also ready. This means no waiting between rounds, and you can complete it at the pace of your own matches. I love this for convention events, since everybody has other things to do, and who wants to wait around? If you like this kind of tournament structure at our events, let me know. I'd love for us to do more. Okay, so that's neat, but it's barely the tip of the unusual iceberg here. March of the Machine is about a battle happening across mini planes at once, and I wanted to bring that to life in this event. So here's how it worked. For each event, there were 6 planes. They each had a static effect. Everybody started in one on a screen everybody could see, and every so often, once the game's kicked off, about every 20 minutes or so, I would announce that the plane was changing to the next one. Sort of like Plane Chase, but a little more straightforward and no die rolling. And the planes were pretty much all beneficial and opt-in for players. So also, if you both forgot it for a bit, no worries, it was just neither player was using it. The only other wrinkle is that the planar effect took start at the beginning of the next turn. So if you were halfway through your turn, it wouldn't suddenly mess up your plans. The days had 2 different sets of planes. So if you played in both events, you'd get a little different experience. On Saturday, we started in the library on Rabaya. It read, each player's starting and maximum hand size is increased by 2. A fun way to kick things off, 2 extra cards. Then we moved to Ondu on Zendikar. It read, instead of playing a land during your turn, you may play any card from your hand face down and tapped as a land. It has tap, add 1 mana of any color. Sort of like all your cards are the modal double-faced lands from Zendikar Rising. This one was really popular for people to do sideboard shenanigans as they brought in their off-color cards for a game or 2. Up next is a place I'm sure you'll all recognize. Yargle's Barge. No? Okay, I made some of these up. But hey, it's my event. It read, 5, discard a card, create a token that's a copy of Yargle, Glutton of Urborg. Activate as a sorcery and only once per game. It also reminded you that Yargle is a 9/3 legendary creature. That's it. One of my favorite stories was somebody getting to this plane and then discarding Anger to create a 9/3 hasty Yargle out of nowhere. Even the player on the receiving end was laughing about that one. Speaking of recognizable places, the next spot was Mana Flood Ridge on Chandalar. It read, land cards have cycling 1. Get past those extra lands and onto the good stuff. Sagu on Tarkir was the next stop. It said, all creatures have morph, their morph cost is equal to their mana cost minus 2. This also created another one of my favorite stories. Someone played a morph on turn 3, then attacked on turn 4. No blocks. What was it? The player tapped a blue and a green and turned up a Rixmathes. Pretty good when it doesn't come in with its slumber counters. And then finally, we visited a place I know quite well, a plane most people will recognize. It's Wizards of the Coast on Earth. It said once per game, you may cast a playtest card, either Mystery Booster playtest or Unknown playtest from your sideboard. You may spend mana as though it was mana of any color to cast it. The playtest cards are one of the most unique parts of this experience, more on those in a moment, and given this was going to show up only at the very tail end of the event for people, it let people cast any cards they were really excited about. So that was Saturday. On Sunday, I switched it up to some new planes. Players started on Shard Boundaries in Alara. This said, all non-land cards have basic land cycling too, which also really helped you splash and hit your land drops. Then we moved on to a place I definitely made up, called the Inversion Zone on Xyrex. It said, whenever you attack with one or more creatures, you may switch up to one target attacking creature's power and toughness until end of turn. It's pretty low impact, but I wanted at least one Xyrex plane since I love that spot. Next up was a more well-known one, with the Underworld on Theros. It said, once per game, you may cast a creature card from your graveyard. Just a little bit of extra resiliency. Number 4 was one that most definitely has nothing weird about it whatsoever. The Moon on Innistrad. It says, whenever a creature you control dies, you may return it to the battlefield face down as a waste. Huh? Why the waste? I'm sure it's fine. Number 5 is the mirror of the Morph one from the first event, Istfel on Kaldheim, which says all non-land cards have Foretell. Their Foretell cost is equal to their mana cost -2. It definitely lets you get some big plays out earlier. And finally, for number 6, we once again ended on Wizards of the Coast with the same plane. It just felt like the right place for both days to end. Okay, so those were the planes. They added a bit of texture and were neat, no doubt. But the real exciting thing here, as I alluded to earlier, were these playtest cards. Much like Philadelphia, there were 62 brand new playtest cards for this event. The lost files of March of the Machine, if you will. Each player got 10 of them. They aren't uncards, but strictly speaking, they don't all work. But that's okay, because thanks to the power of magical hand waving for this event, they did. Perfect. Okay, now I'm going to show you all of them. Note any favorites of yours in the comments below, and maybe I'll see if I can get them turned into real cards someday. First up, Hero's Uncle. With great team-up power comes great team-up responsibility. I thought it would be fun to have a card which called out the legendary team-ups. It's a thing we all recognize and understand, but you can't really reference mechanically. But here, it works. Next is Theros Charm. Okay, so one thing I did for these playtest cards, unlike Philly's, is I grabbed other people in the building for design ideas using a process called hole filling. After seeing Philly's event, a lot of people wanted to contribute. Many of these are my cards, but also several are straight out of that hole filling list. And some are somewhere between, like this card. Somebody submitted a single plane themed charm called Olgrotha Charm. You'll see a version of it later, and I love the idea of not just doing it, but blowing it out into a cycle that all cast spells from their planes. So here's the Theros one. 3 abilities you'll sometimes play stapled onto one card certainly gets there. Isamaru and Yoshimaru brings us to our first of our team up legends. There are a lot of them in here. To be honest, these were just too fun, and it was great to remove any restraint and work on them. This one was so cute to me too. 2 cute Kamigawa dogs in one cute place. Hey now, it's Kylum All-Star. It was a great card to get your game on, and it certainly got played. Only shooting stars break the mold, and when an idea like this was pitched to me, I said, yeah, what a concept, and ran with it. Gerard and Hannah is another team up. Yes, they're both long gone, but that wasn't about to stop me here. A fusion of their 2 cards, it's a couple of beloved faces from Magic's past. This set had a lot less event special rules tied cards than the last one, but Agoraphobic Phyrexian is the one I wanted to do here. It shuts down the plane effect for a bit, which made a lot of sense to do here. But at the end of the day, that's probably not quite as scary and limited as the 4/4 flyer, 4/5. On to blue, Shadowmoor Draw Spell was a card somebody submitted, and the only thing I changed was making it clear the mechanic counted as Convoke for the purposes of cards like Joyful Storm Sculptor. People really enjoyed this, and I kind of want to try doing some untapped Convoke somewhere, sometime. Probably unkeyworded and maybe on a sorcery instead, since the instant speed untap was extra insult to injury here. What do you think? Olgrotha Charm is the blue one of the charm cycle. 2 cards you might know, and one I imagine you, well, forgot. Look, Homelands is not a very deep set for blue spells, okay? It was either that or like Baki's Curse, you know? Xyrex Squire was one someone else submitted, and I laughed out loud at. My first instinct was no way, but the idea of calculating a hypotenuse in Magic was so hilarious and so perfectly Xyrex that I pursued it and asked around the office, and it turns out enough people knew how to do it, and you could easily search up a calculator. If not, I still made it on the weaker side just in case, but it's so charming to me. My favorite is the player who actually had a huge calculator in their bag and was using it for this card. Amazing. This card is for you, math nerds. Represent. Far-Seeing Flockmate is a really simple one. Backup, but not a +1/+1 counter. Cool, simple idea that's easy to understand even if we didn't do it in March of the Machine. Love these kinds of twists. Phyrexian Adapter is a funny one that doesn't really work in the rules, but certainly does in playtest card world. We have so many kinds of artifact tokens now, it was fun to turn incubators into a one-stop shop for everything you might need. Toothy and Zender Split came to me because I thought teaming up 2 different Battle Bond partner with legends would just be charming. When the multiverse calls, new team-ups happen. And secretly, I want to see if I can rule 0 this into my heads I win, tails you lose commander deck. Any takers? Welcome to Minneapolis is the one card Matt Tabak sent me, but I'm so glad he did because it was a hit. 1, because all the locals wanted to get theirs signed, but 2, because it seemed like at the right intersection of annoying and interesting. Strong, but with a good kind of tension. Though I imagine in Commander, not limited, it probably does get out of hand. May of the Machine just made me smile. I liked the idea of a card which changed slightly from day to day, and it really all came together on this date-themed card. Not to mention the not-so-triumphant return of Fate Seal. Okay, so I have a few things to say about Incubob. Somebody submitted a card to me that incubated a Blighted Agent, and I thought it was cute, but thought something more iconic would be fun. So I just chose Dark Confident almost entirely on the name Incubob. Highly thought out and precise, you see. However, it used to be an enchantment that entered the battlefield and did this and had another ability. Designer Cameron Williams did a look through the cards and thought it would be cooler and cleaner as just a sorcery, maybe with flashback, so I made the tweak late, but forgot to remove the enter the battlefield. Whoops. If you want to play this card in your commander deck or cube or something, just ignore that part. Cross it out, whatever you feel like. Sorceries are very hard to get to enter the battlefield. Innistrad Charm is the black member of this cycle. Surprisingly, it was hard to find 3 equal effects to do here, where it wasn't just always choose the removal spell option. I enjoy that each of these 3 come from a different one of the 3 Innistrad eras. Human Frailty from the first block, Cemetery Recruitment from the second, and Duress from the newest 2. Incubation Triformer introduces a fan favorite meme, triple flipple cards. Okay, not exactly, but the idea of creating a third side of a card made me smile and thought it would be fun. Hey, if you're on a quest, you have to hope to complete it, which is what's going on with Quest Completed Beast. Questing Beast, but Phyrexian, was a fun one to smash up. Poor Eldraine. There's a lot of text here, as is Questing Beast tradition, so I'll give you a moment to read. 3, 2, 1, okay, let's move on. Invasion Specialist was one that was submitted in, and I felt was clever. One that let you use your battles like loyalty. Simple enough to understand and definitely strong if you have some battles. Flip them and draw cards in the process. The Black Myojin mashup here is a black team-up legend that made me smile. What if both Black Myojins were working together? It turns out the effect would be pretty synergistic. I have been told this card was pretty ridiculous, but at 8 mana, yeah, you should be winning the game here. Azra Match Thrower has the Battle Bond keyword, which just made me cackle. A riff on Soul Bond, but pairing with battles, and the name of a set I led and love? Yeah. This one was submitted in by another designer, and I laughed with delight when I saw it. That card had to make it. Tarkir Charm is the red member of this cycle. I quite like these. Maybe we'll do something like them someday. You'll play this for the removal mode, but the other 2 will definitely get used sometimes. Jessica and Kamal brings these 2 siblings back. 2 damage is the space left between Jessica and Red Kamal, so it made sense to me. I didn't let them hit creatures because that's just brutal at 4 mana and 2 damage, but still, a 4 mana 4/1 first striking haster with this ability is plenty strong. Joven and Chandler is something I saw plenty of chatter about on social media, and I wanted to bring to life. These are 2 classic cards. Why was Chandler 4R and Joven 3RR? The world may never know, but I decided to hew to the 3RR answer here. Enjoy, Homelands fans. Nevermind is a card Daniel Holt, known Kamigawa fan, sent me. It's a little out of place, but I like a few things that pull away from the more obvious themes to do here. I imagine Kamigawa would try splicing onto anything during such an epic battle. I don't think this card is very strong, but it is cute. Across the Multiverse plays with the format in a fun way. Between playtest cards, mystery booster cards, Multiverse Legends, and more, there are plenty of these rolling around. In retrospect, I do think this should have probably only been 2 mana, but regardless, I like the idea of this, and it kind of only fits here. Norn and Felden, what a team up. The heartbroken artificer and the scared adventurer in one place. Just like with Felden, what you're really looking for here is anything with an enter the battlefield ability to keep copying and getting value out of. What's that on the horizon? That's no moon, Mist. A reference back to Moon Mist. I'll admit, I was mostly charmed by the name, but it is cute in this set to be able to transform your incubator tokens and Phyrexian Praetors for just 2 mana, or slaughter your opponent's creatures in combat if you set it up right with enough Phyrexians. Cute card, but the name is perfection. Merfolk Surveyor was built ground up from somebody submitting me a card with Explore Clash. It's so bizarre and ridiculous and silly that it is exactly right for 1 card. 2 mechanics that work similarly, 2 planes, Ixalan and Lorwyn, which both have Merfolk, that all felt right here. In case you don't feel like reading the brick of a reminder text, first you explore the top card of each player's library, then they clash. Yep. Occupation of Llanowar is a take on using a kind of battle that isn't a siege, one which goes back and forth between players as they try and capture it. This is probably the mechanic I had the most individual people come up and tell me they wanted to see on actual cards. It feels so appropriate for a battle. What do you think? Would you want to see actual cards like this? Kamigawa Charm is the final, and green, member of the cycle. Should it have been 4 mana instead of 3? Yeah, maybe, but I liked promoting mana fixing in this environment so people could play their colors. Now that you've seen all 5 of these charms, which is your favorite? Shatterstorm and Awaken the Woods came from the idea of doing a spell team up, which I loved. Something with Storm seemed fun, so I searched for Storm cards, hit Shatterstorm, and went from there. I think this card is pretty cool and probably neat to try in cubes. A Storm card you can use to combo out, but also some green decks will just use it for mana ramp, given that they're forest tokens. Phyrexian Cytoshaper is another card that does something fun with incubate tokens. With a new set mechanic, it's fun to play around with it a bit here, and trying to tweak or grant them abilities is a good time. This originally gave them Graft, but after showing it around, I changed it to Evolve. It sounded a bit more fun than leaving useless incubators around. Praetorhoof Behemoth comes entirely from designer Jacob Mooney one day saying the words Praetorhoof Behemoth in a meeting I was in as a joke. I came back and made this card. So it really is top-down pun. And you know what? With these playtest cards, sometimes that's enough for a plenty charming design. Emrakul and Chatterfang is one of my favorites in the entire set. The Emrakul versus 15 squirrels joke is pretty much as old as Emrakul herself, and to team Emrakul up with the squirrel army is delightful. 11 mana is probably a tad cheap for this, but I wanted people to maybe be able to cast it in the event, and some of them certainly did. One player even cheated it out with Cauldron Dance to attack for 15, which really just warmed my eldritch heart. Annex and Cymede and Kianos and Tiro came from the idea of doing a quad team up of 2 existing double legends. There were only a few we wanted to do, but this was one which made me smile. It's a nice mashup of the 2 cards. Shahrazad and Sinbad is another one of my favorites. As a Rabaya fan, I wanted to get some representation in these playtest cards somewhere, and what's more iconic than Shahrazad? You're limited to 1 subgame per match, which is about right. Doing this more than once gets old fast. I did see one player put hot soup on this to make sure it could get through. Now that's quite the classic Arabian Nights fable. Riku and Riku was tied in my mind with Old Sarkhan and New Sarkhan as a funny 2 of the same character teamed up legend. Ultimately, I liked double Riku more. This was a favorite of many people, both in flavor and function. We need to revisit Riku sometime. Helena and Elena and Gisa and Geralf is another one of the quad team-up legends. And while hard to cast, wow, this card packs a punch. A number of people wanted to go build a commander deck with this, and I look forward to seeing their Rule 0 legal decks. It's Baron Sengir and Autumn Willow. I love doing a bit of Elgrotha throwback here, and these are 2 of the most iconic characters from that set. Note that this triggers for all your vampires, so you can play this with the vampires, and it's especially good if you can have multiple ones ping the same creature. Okay everybody, it's time for the most important team up of all, Colossal Dreadmaw and Stormcrow. This one went in immediately, no changes, just perfect. Don't let your memes just be dreams, you know? I wanted to make it legendary because of how legendary it is, but was concerned not enough people would get that. So I whipped up some dev note flavor text to make that happen. The CM is Chris Mooney, not to be confused with the earlier mentioned Jacob Mooney. Riven Turnbull and Princess Lucrezia is a very if you know kind of card. Here's Riven Turnbull. Here's Princess Lucrezia. Here's them together. Yep, truly an epic team up. Ramp into your Emrakul and Chatterfang, I suppose? Avacyn and Gristlebrand is another creature team up that couldn't and definitely wouldn't happen, but it certainly can here. Appropriately enough, this pairing will usually win you the game in limited unless your opponent can exile it right away. Koma and Toski. One funny thing about working on these cards so close to the event, they got made a couple weeks ago, is that it let me see reactions from the set to try and get any asks at least into these cards. A lot of people were asking for these two characters, so I thought it would be fun to put them together. For the ability, I almost made it create worm coils instead of coils, but figured that was maybe a bridge too far. Knowing half the battle, because knowing is half the battle. The other half is apparently finding the battle. Unicycling Automaton is an attempt to do two things. First of all, make mana bases a little better. People want to play their playtest cards, and a really efficient land cycler like this helps a lot. The second is a silly backup variation. Sure, you can back up a card in your hand, why not? For Segovia! Segovian Sword is a riff on Living Weapon and for Mirrodin, but with -1/-1 tokens. To be clear, not a 1/1 token, a -1/-1 token. Things are so tiny on Segovia, you know, it made me smile. This was pioneered, by the way, by another -1/-1 creature, Spinal Parasite, all the way back in 5th Dawn. What a weird card. Big Truck. This card just made me laugh. We all know that truck noise as it backs up. So doing that as a backup matters cards really tickled me. One player I talked to opened this up and they're a professional truck driver and they were ecstatic. This one goes out to you, buddy. Jite and Divining Top. Two dreaded cards from original Kamigawa block teamed up in one place. Now granted, the power of Jite was more in the -1/-1 and +2/+2 modes, and the power of Divining Top was more in the efficiency of the raid, but put it all together and you still have a pretty compelling card. Mannequin and Milliken. It's what happens when you put Mannequin and Milliken together. That's it. I liked it. Next, Luxior and Shadowspear. Two equipments involving Elspeth, one great place. Doing an equipment team up made me smile, and these were the two legendary equipment to get the job done. Equipping a Planeswalker was unlikely, but not impossible, and the equipment could be reasonable on its own. Bob the Claymore has actually a pretty touching story. So every now and then, kids come to visit wizards from the Make-A-Wish Foundation. These kids could wish for anything, and they want nothing more than to come spend the day with us. It's truly so incredibly meaningful. Well, anyway, about a month ago, one such kid came to visit, and one of the exercises he got to do was make some cards of his own with us and see how we made cards, and make some example Phyrexian cards. And while they weren't going to make any kind of real set normally, I thought I would do something special and include one of them here. This is for you, buddy. I really hope you see this and you're doing well. Phyrexian Incubator is a play on Mirror Incubator from the original Mirrodin block. A bit of a deep cut. However, funnily enough, we forgot to put on that you exile the cards from your deck. Oops. Hilariously though, that certainly makes for more of a palatable card. It certainly makes looping it a lot more exciting. Sword of Fire and Ice and War and Peace came directly from the idea of doing a sword team up. I knew this card would be bananas in limited, but the numbers and abilities were pretty much set by the costs and abilities of previous swords. I'm not sure if doing this was right because it was very strong and you'd always play it, and it's brutal if your opponent is two of those three colors, but on the flip side, it is also 10 mana before it does anything, so maybe it's okay. What do you think of this kind of tri-sword? Battle Mirror Sphere is a totally goofy idea someone sent into me as a play on Mirror Battlesphere. I found it cute enough that I put it into the set, and even though there aren't a ton of battles, usually you have at least one or two to go find, and this cheats it into play, which is nice. Guildmark and Unknown Event Shores are an attempt to get more mana fixing into the set. They're both excellent ways to help you splash a third color and get more of those playtest cards into your deck if you want to play them. Also, the pledge mechanic on Guildmark I think is pretty cool, and maybe there's something fun to do there someday, even if it is definitely a better mana rock than we'd want to make. The Belligerent and Useless Island is another team up that just really amused me. A deep cut that someone sent in. I mean, look at that type line. Legendary, artifact, land, vehicle, island. How can you not love that? What a wacky Magic card. And finally, Common Curve Filler. Just a card I figured you'd usually play and could help make sure your deck just worked a little bit better. It's a simple one, but a nice one to have around. Now those are the 60 cards you could open, but there were 2 different prize cards, one for each day. Once you finish your 3 rounds, you'd get handed this card along with your other prizes. And while no, it's not an officially legal commander, if you wanted to build a deck around it, I bet a lot of opponents would be fine with you trying it. The one for Saturday was Mini, Planar Tourist, which encourages you to play a plane themed deck, fitting for this set. I look forward to people doing deep dives that make that card work and getting shown obscure references when I play against it. Sunday's card was Paulus the Plane Shifter, who can bring some of the fun of plane chase into your normal commander game, reminiscent of how this event has planes happening of its own. And there you have it, all 62 cards and all the fun of Unknown in Minneapolis. What's next? Well, I'm planning to take Unknown to Barcelona. What is it going to be there? Well, if you know, please tell me. I haven't made it yet. That said, I have some ideas, and I think it's going to be a real good time. Hope to see you there. So, which of the Unknown cards were your favorites? Any cards or mechanics you'd like to see be made real, or any you definitely don't want us to make real? Let me know in the comments down below. I'll talk with you again soon. Until then, may you not get attacked by 15 squirrels in a subgame. You got this. It focuses on the relaunch of the show in 2005, so it has the 9th, 10th, and 11th Doctors and their stories. The face cards are the 10th Doctor and Rose Tyler, with the 10th Doctor being blue-red and Rose Tyler being white. The third deck, a blue-red-green deck named Paradox Power, focuses on the newest era of the show, with the 12th and